Howdy ho, everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean Paul P and myself. Well, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us, Paul. It's nice to have you as always. I suspect we may be short on numbers today because it is, of course, a public holiday in Singapore, where, of course, it is Chinese New Year and everyone's having their family dinners, I should suspect, today. Is that today? Has that already happened? I'm not sure, to be honest, but expecting that we will. G'day, Paul, again. I'm suspecting that we may well have a fairly light on room. Anyway, we will conduct business as usual. Let's start, speaking of business as usual, with gold. That's not gold. That's gold. And the range is continuously expanding today, and nothing has changed that to this point. There's a low of our range, there's a high of our range. That's the current range, of course, from where, Tokyo Open till current. And, of course, we're waiting for the Open of London session to see if we can break out of this particular range and, of course, trade that and profit from it. Good one on Thursday. That worked lovely. Very, very nice. Not sure how that would have worked on Friday. Range would have been candles, that one. That is the 10 o'clock bar. So range would have been here to here, one suspects. Sorry, to here. So that would not have been a good one. It would have been taken in long and out. So winner chicken dinner, loser. By the look of that on Friday. I didn't trade on Friday, of course. I did in the morning. I placed an order, which didn't trigger, but I certainly wasn't trading at that time of day. All right, what's happening now? Will we trade this long here and short here? Answer yes, because we don't know exactly what the parameters are at the moment. We're tending to trade this forward. So instead of back testing it, we're forward testing it, which is what I like to do, frankly. And that's why we don't put much money on the table. So we won't be adding rules like, would I go short here at the moment? The answer is no, because I'm on the daily pivot. Sorry, that's the weekly pivot. Same thing. It's a support level, DR1. So the range is pretty defined today by the pivots. DR1 here, weekly pivot here. Interesting. We'll see how that transpires. But with a minute and a tad to go, we will wait 2 seconds and see if that's going to set up for us. I don't like, to be honest, putting an entry there, but it is what it is. Rules are the rules, and the rules are that we trade short at the bottom of the range, we trade long at the top of the range, and the stop loss is vice versa. So I'd really like this to come off here before I put this order in. The order currently will be, if I can have a look at my status bar, it's there. The order will be, why can't I see the levels? That's weird. Status bar. I just switched it off, that's why. Duh. The low is 1919.65, so it'll be 1919 for the short, and it will be 1936 for the long, and the stop loss for the short. So 1919 and 36. We best place the short orders. Okay. As always, with these tests, very, very low stake to put in the market. 0.05 should do. It is a pending order for a sell stop. And the level is 1919. Is that what I said? I thought I said 1916. 1919 it must be. 1919.00. Okay, and the stop loss will be 1936. All right, let's make sure I've got that right. Okay, 19, still not showing me. Boy, that's annoying. 1919 is correct. Okay, so 1919 is the entry for the short and the stop loss for the long, should the long trigger before the short. And the entry for the long is 1936, which of course is the stop loss for the short, should the short trigger, which has not done at this point. We'll see how that all pans out. Rightio, let's now have a look at, I've got a funny feeling I lost my view of participants. 2 people entered the waiting room. Right, sorry about this, guys. There we go. And now, hello Faisal, hello Fang, hello Gary, who've just entered the room, and my apologies for keeping you outside there for those long moments, should you have experienced such a thing. We are going short gold at 1919 with a stop loss at 1936, or we're going long gold at 1936 with a stop loss at 1919. We will see which triggers first and go from there. Rightio, before Ash comes in, let me take a quick update of things that may or may not be of interest to you. I am short Aussie yen as of last week on the weekly game changer bar, as you will recall. And I didn't get TP1, sadly. TP1 was here and it looks very much like it's going in the wrong direction at the moment, that's for sure. But we've got a fair bit of resistance ahead, so all is not lost, although it doesn't look sweet at the moment on Aussie yen. There's nothing really to do. Probably too close to the stop loss to play anything else. If it hits our stop loss, if it's our stop loss, as I've said in January, I trade at 0.25% maximum, so it's not going to break the bank if that does get hit. But of course, I'll be looking for that not to happen. Let's see how we go. That's the only trade that I'm in. Aussie Kiwi, I have an order on Aussie Kiwi, as I did last week on the daily chart. On Friday morning, I did say I placed a trade, and that was it. But I did premise this on Thursday by saying if Aussie Kiwi set up that way, and if Euro Aussie, I think was the other one, which I've taken off my chart for some reason. If they set up, then they are definite orders to take short. And that's exactly what I've done on Aussie Kiwi. Order's still there. We've got an inside bar on Friday, so nothing happened. And currently we're matching that bar on Friday as we fiddle around with the pivots there. So orders, actually I'll probably change it slightly, but the order is entry at 1.0737. Stop loss is at 1.0819. And my first take profit, which is closing 75% of the order, is going to be at 1.0667. Why am I closing 3/4? Well, it's going to be a support level, I believe. And in the scheme of things, I'm actually probably a little bit bullish on this. The interesting part, of course, and we were going to try and get Paul Bottrell in to give us some, or his thoughts on this. I think he's camping with his son at the moment, so he won't be talking to us today, I don't believe. But it's going to depend, maybe somewhat dependent on how the market reacts to this change of Prime Minister. And we do have a Prime Minister-elect, if you like, if that's the word, jumping into Ms. Ardern's shoes. in the next few days or weeks or whatever it is. So interesting. The market hasn't really done too much to react to that at this point, but it'll be interesting to see what the big boys think, and if they do make a move on it, if it's negative to the Kiwi, and I don't suspect it would be, frankly. And I'm really going by what Paul says of Jacinda Ardern. Great ambassador, but not a great politician or a great mover and shaker in terms of economic development. So I'm expecting that the Kiwi may rally on the back of that, but that's purely speculation, and I have nothing to back that up except my own opinion. So if that's the case, then Aussie Kiwi should go short and find a support level, and that's where we're going to take some profit. As far as the game changer bars for the week are concerned, we have 4 or 5, I think it is. Okay, 5. Aussie CAD. Aussie CAD for mine is probably in a pretty good position to go short here, I've got to say. The reason I'm not short or haven't taken this order is A, I'm in drawdown on Aussie yen. B, I've got an order set in Aussie Kiwi, and that should do. I can't add to that risk any further by going short the Aussie against the CAD. It was a bit of a toss-up, to be fair, the Aussie CAD or the Aussie Kiwi to go short, and I chose Aussie Kiwi because why? Because I had the order there last week and it didn't really move, and I think that, as I said, I've got that little bit of a hint in my mind that Jacinda Ardern's resignation will be positive for the Kiwi. We've already been through Aussie Kiwi, so let's not talk about that. Euro yen is another one. Tough to take this one for mine because, yes, we're coming probably off a support level, but we've already done that. I think we're going to find resistance fairly quickly here around about that level, and for that reason, despite the fact that it is a game changer bar, I think it's trading straight into resistance, so not for me. In terms of a directional bias, yeah, I don't know. The yen's so hard, really is. You know, it had that rally there for a couple of weeks, and now it's just gone like a busted bum, and it's really very, very difficult for me to say, okay, the yen's going to re-strengthen. I don't know. It's too hard to call. So I don't really want to trade outside of what I'm already exposed to in the yen with the Aussie yen short. So let's leave that one alone. A couple more. One is Kiwi Swiss. And Kiwi, oh, hang on, there's some more people trying to get into the room. I keep hearing little guns go off, which is weird. Is that your trades, Ash? Or is there somebody trying to shoot me? I can't hear you. Oh, it's like your microphone's on the other side of the room.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah, something not good.
Okay.
While you're sorting that, I'll continue to go through. And apologies for those of you who've been waiting in the waiting room. Unfortunately, I can't look in 3 different directions at the same time. Where did I get to? Kiwi versus the Swissy. Yeah, again, the same kind of problem. You're trading straight into resistance here, but if you take it as a directional bias, you do have the hint of an inverted head and shoulders here. If that's the case, that's the neckline. So you would expect price to go there, but trading it from here to there with a risk down here or even down here more conservatively is a very, very poor reward to risk scenario. So for that reason, I choose not to trade that at this point. That said, should we get maybe on a smaller time frame a false break of that level, then we've got room to take profit before the neckline. That would then make sense to me. So not dismissing it from a directional bias, but I am dismissing it as a poor reward to risk at this point in time. Final one for the week is dollar CAD. Directionally, I do believe this is the right way to go. Kenny from South Park. Good one, Faisal. Okay, dollar CAD. Directionally, I'm absolutely in favour of this. However,
you can hear me now, right?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, mate. That's good. Excellent. However, completely at the wrong part of the cycle to trade this short. I always say I need to have something off a resistance level. And that resistance level for me is probably up here somewhere. So to go short on that bar just doesn't make sense to me. You can also premise that or add to that by you've got a low test bar here, high test bar here, high test bar here, low test bar here. Although the market is falling, it's falling by gravity, it would appear, rather than by absolute commitment of traders. So I'd need to wait until we got back to here if I was to trade this short, or maybe even not even. I've got to see some sort of rally before I can trade this short now. It's just in the wrong place to go short for mine. So they're the weekly ones. And as I said, I've chosen the directional bias on Aussie Kiwi, but I'm trading it not on the weekly chart. I'm trading it on the daily chart based on Thursday's candle. So that's that one. Again, those of you who come in late, if you want to follow that one with me, it is entering at 1.0737. And the stop loss is at 1.0819. First take profit is at 1.0667. And I'm closing 3/4 of the position and moving my stop loss to entry at that point. A couple of things to note. Early in the piece today, that is a London Open, we've got a few things going our way in terms of potential setups, and they're all really surrounding the US dollar, in my humble opinion. The potential for this to close that gap that we've seen this morning with the dollar index is probably high. We're coming off a support level, and we've got an untested weekly and daily pivot, very much a magnet to price, in my humble opinion. So I'd be keen for that gap to close. And if that were to be the case, then I would be looking to trade the upside down version of that, which of course is the euro versus the dollar. And as in the upside down version, the dollar index, you see there's only a tiny gap here, but you've also got the catches here, daily pivot and weekly pivot sandwiched together, just waiting for price to come down there. How can I do that? Well, I can speculate and jump in the market and scalp it, but that's not my thing. What I would prefer to see is a resistance trade line occur here at some stage. Maybe that's a high. Then we need another one, and then we need a false break of that line. So we're going to be waiting a fair time for that. There's no support trade line either. So it's going to be either A, speculate, or B, wait. I'll be the one that waits. Those who want to speculate can do so, but that's not for me. Aussie and the pound, and pretty much they'll all be the same, I should imagine. That's the weekly pivot, daily pivot down here on the Aussie. That's probably got a better chance of going first, since we do have a trade line through here and a false break. This would be the best case scenario here on the Aussie. I'll just draw it so it becomes clear. If I can actually get my pen to work. There we go. So we've already got, you can call that a little double top if you want. I don't care what you call it. Doesn't bother me what you call it. But it's the potential for this to reverse. This being the current momentum. I'm not suggesting trend, which is probably still down. But what I need to see is price consolidate here for a couple of candles, shoot back down underneath here and the weekly pivot, close down here, then retest the confluence of trade line and weekly pivot. That would be ideal. And we need to take some profit there. If we can get a small enough candle, that would be the trade. There to there, that would be the trade. You could probably extend it down to here if you so chose. I think that's probably the best option. If we get it up here, even better option.
Working now, mate.
Sorry, mate?
Oh, it worked. Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. It's just I've got these new headphones because my old ones sort of got really distorted. I've got these new headphones and I didn't think the mic was working, but that's good if it is.
Well, when you sit still, I'll tell you if it's actually working. I can hear you. No, I can't. No, can't hear you. Whatever you've done, there must be a loose wire in there somewhere, or a loose connection. I'll keep going. Just yell, keep yelling. If I can hear you, I'll let you know. But at the moment, I can't hear you. Not at all. So that I need to see a false break of resistance to trade Aussie short against the dollar. But that is definitely my want short term. And that's not necessarily the long-term bias, but short-term, I think it's a good opportunity. I won't look at all those ones against the dollar, but we will look at the pound as well. You could argue that the pound has really set up as a false break at this moment. What I don't really like here is it tried to break through that level, but it barely did so. The other thing I don't like about this is the size of the bar. So if you chose to go short here, you've probably got to put your stop loss there, or maybe even there if you want to be a little bit safer. 40 into 13 or 12 even is not a good reward to risk ratio. That's the daily pivot sitting there. And if you chose the weekly pivot, fair enough, I get that. But you've got to take something off the table here, or at least get safe in the market if you chose so to do. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the earlier opportunities. I think they are against the dollar. I think they are short against the dollar, but only to those pivots. And once you've got there, probably time to reassess. The reason I say that is because the dollar, I can't see anything other than this really soft level underneath the dollar. So this is a short time, and I totally get why you'd want to buy the dollar at the moment on the dollar index, because we're at the bottom of the range. We've got a gap in the market. We've got untested daily pivot, weekly pivot. So it makes perfect sense to have a bullish bias short term, maybe even up to the top of the range. But thereafter, if you look at the bigger time frames, that's the only support where we're at. And I can't see anything that suggests any different. You know, that's the support level we're at. It's soft. It's not super duper. Despite the fact, that we're oversold here, I think we've probably got a little bit more to go. The one thing I would say is, if we go back to the weekly chart, the potential for this, to come back to here is probably good, because we've got a resistance level here. We've got a left shoulder here. Maybe we get a right shoulder. It'll be a complex or a compound one, because there's a couple of little bumps here. Maybe we get a second one here. So that kind of makes sense to me, but the strength of the support level is not strong, in my humble opinion. But I'm not a seller, definitely not a seller of the dollar short term. And for that reason, I am a seller of the pound, I am a seller of the Aussie, and I am a seller of the euro. I'll be watching that euro like a hawk, as I said, to see if we can get a short in place to trade to the daily pivot. Nothing really. Indexes are interesting. Oil seems to want to break through this level. It's gone through the monthly, retested the monthly. It seems to want to rally. That's doing a heck of a job getting there. I think that would be my bias long oil. Aussie 200's been amazing. Took off early in the month and really hasn't slowed down too much. Retested the monthly pivot, shot it up again, taken out the high of November even, and looks to be on its way. Where's the resistance? Yeah, probably about there somewhere, I would have thought. So maybe it hasn't got that far to go, but it does look to be on fire at present. Overbought from mine, of course, so tough to pick it up. You could say the same of the FTSE. Ash, of course, we'll talk about that when he gets his microphone working. Big day, I guess, on Friday for the S&P 500 as it bounced off the monthly pivot. and the market went from, in my opinion, that risk on, risk off scenario. The market seemed to go from risk off to risk on overnight on Friday. Ash will have an opinion on as to why that was the case. And the NASDAQ was one that truly rallied off that monthly pivot as well. Where are we in terms of trading those particular instruments? Well, the NASDAQ looks as though it's got a little bit left in it. So I don't know that I'd want to be trading that short at this point. The others, silver and gold, however, are a different kettle of fish. And silver, as you can clearly see, has gone into a logjam here, so ranging quite well. What I find very difficult, however, is when we're in the middle of the range to find an entry. Lower high here, I would get interested, however, in trading silver short, because it is coming off the top of the range, if you like. Where's the top of the range? Well, that's a good question. It could be here. It could be through here. I'd choose that. My rules for that are 2 highs, 2 lows. So I generally pick the first 2 highs that are equal, and that can be the top of the candle or the open of the candle. Then I start my line with 2 lows that are equal. And I see that one and that one. So I could go there. I could probably go there. Suits the eye a little bit better, that one, so we use that one. And that makes the range in there, meaning, okay, we haven't really come off the top, but I'm okay because that level is a cloud of a price saying that we have. And like I said, if I saw today on the 4-hour chart a lower high here, particularly if it was retesting the pivots, I think that would be an opportunity to go short. Other way to look at it, in terms of tradability, for me, would be as a false break of that trade line. Don't really want to take that high out, however. So break, consolidate, don't take the high out, back underneath the pivots, retest the confluence, and away you go. I think that makes perfect sense as well. Gold, which has triggered a short. Yeah, a little bit less inclined to say that there's a setup available to us on gold, because I can't really see the strong resistance area. Maybe we're at it, maybe we're through it. That doesn't look to be super strong to me, to be fair. So maybe more upside for gold before it comes back down. And it does concern me. Well, it doesn't concern me because I'm not in it, not in a trade on it. But I would start to be a little bit less inclined to be bearish gold should it break that 1960 level, because then that looks as though it's going to go for these highs, which then cancels my bias, which is, of course, short based on this double top. I would still trade this short if I got a reversal bar or a game changer bar on the daily or the weekly. And as long as everything else was okay, you could call that certainly spinning top. I'd rather see that bar sitting there than a spinning top sitting there. So whilst it's got a higher high, it hasn't really closed on its low, and for that reason, that's not tradable for me. But certainly I'll be looking for those game changer bars on gold. And I've spoken about the dollar index. So short term, bullish the dollar, and only very short term at this point, up to here somewhere, which makes me a bear on Euro, Aussie, Kiwi. Kiwi not so much, question mark on the Kiwi because of this Ardern resignation thing. Anyway, that's the way I see the world this Monday. Can you talk, Ash, or no?
Yeah, I've flipped to my laptop with the old tried and tested. So what I've been doing is sort of staying on one system, and I bought a new headset just so I could stay on one system, because the other one just started to collapse. But this hasn't worked out very well. I'm going to connect to my different internet.
Oh, look, I'm sure it'll come good. It's just a matter of fiddling.
Yeah, just a matter of fiddling, and yeah, probably, mate. Probably, I'll be upset if it doesn't work because this headset was recommended, and the sound is brilliant. You know, it's got this noise cancelling thing, and it's got nice bass. You can listen to music and stuff. But if the mic doesn't work, then it's not fit for purpose. So I'll be just seeing if I need to download a driver or something. I might need to, but that didn't work. So I'm on the laptop. I do have a trade actually, mate, and
Okay.
I will share it with you. It's not anything that I've traded before, so I don't know how it's going to work out.
Not anything you've traded before. Interesting.
Nothing that I've traded before, no. And I think it might be. We'll talk about the markets in afterwards, but but it's something that even though I haven't traded before, it is of interest just because of the data that suggests this particular currency may well be the weakest. So let me just bring in this and this. And go to this, and this is the trade here. So it's for the Sing versus the Swissy, or the Swissy versus the Sing. Now I'm trading it really off the back of. Let me just see if I can bring in the pivots here. So you can see the pivots are I've really traded off this daily pivot and looking for the lows. Now, initially, when I took this trade, it looked like this area was breaking down. So I was kind of getting in as on the pullback here because I thought that we might be getting this lower low on the 15. But it's actually turned around, which may negate the trade, and it might still come down. But I might have picked the wrong spot, possibly, or it might not be a trade at all. I don't know. But let's see. So this is the other information that I'm going off the back of. The hourly has started to come down. It looked to me like we were through this area as well. Let me just get these trend lines so they're raying up, and it looks like there's an area of resistance. So okay, we hadn't touched that trend line initially, but I thought the daily pivot might be enough to kind of get us going. I put the stops above the previous swing on the hourly, so it should be safe. If this is going to be going down, if it's going up, it's breaking through this level, and you know all bets are off anyway. I'm not even sure. This area here looks relatively safe as well. By the time, depends on which part of the day. You know, if it starts to break through, then that might hold it up, but that will negate my position. 4 hour you can see is also trending down, but hasn't tested this area where it came from. So there is a chance that this does pop up first. Doesn't look good right now, I have to say, but the Swissy is the weakest. Now let's just check the daily and the weekly as well. You can see on the daily that we are in a downtrend, so that's looking pretty good. Weekly looks like we've broken through these areas as well, and that looks like a good area on the weekly as well to try and take the shorts. Monthly, it is just starting to creep down. So that's the trade, mate. So it is for the Swissy Sing short. Now the Swissy is the one really. What I'm really doing is trading the Swissy short. Good morning, Lewis. I'm trading the Swissy short, and the reason I'm trading the Swissy short is that something was said last week by the SMB that actually sort of drove the Swissy shorter. I didn't look into what it was, but I was looking at the Swissy and I just saw my pound Swiss trade take off. I was in the long on the pound Swiss, and that just took off. But the pound actually had some pretty negative looking data. So there was not really any reason for the pound to rally. So it was a Swissy play more than anything else. Now the other thing is the COT data is still very weak on the Swiss franc as well. So it is the weakest when it comes down to some of the other metrics, and also seasonally the currencies tend to bobble around a bit, sort of like for the next couple of weeks. Really, we don't really sort of see that much movement until into February. But the Swissy is the weakest of them, so it's minor, but it's probably just about enough just to go on. So that's the reason for taking that particular trade. Now, when it comes down to the rest of the market, I am really interested in going short on silver. That's the one I'm looking out for. Now it has had a little push down today so far, but we are on this area. If I'm looking at the 4 hour, we're on this area here of support. But you can see that there is some negativity here. You know, when we go through this whole kind of area, every time it comes up here, it sells off. And you know, sometimes it sells off really, really aggressively as well. So there are obviously sort of, you know, some traders up here waiting for this one to see if they get the correct trade. This is the area that I'm really looking out for, and I'd love that to coincide with the high, and that does mean that we're probably maybe another month away actually. But looking at that, it looks like, oh no, not a month away. Sorry. Yeah, maybe a month away. It looks like that on the weekly. Maybe a month away from this touching that high, being, you know, and coinciding with these highs and breaking down. So if there's no hard and fast guarantee here, and I would trade it as a hedge trade. So I would trade it. I did do this on Friday, but it didn't quite break down enough for me. So I just I closed the position. I've hedged it against gold. So I'm going short Swissy, long gold. And the reason for that is that whenever either of them moves, the Swissy moves a lot more than the other. So if there's volatility, if there's any kind of,
or silver.
On silver, yeah. So silver really moves, you know, because silver's, you know, 20 odd bucks. So for silver to move a couple of bucks, it's a 10% move. So for, you know, for gold to move a 10% move, it's got to move near $200. So it's got a lot more volatility in silver. So I really like the short trade in silver. So hedge on the short trade, but there's no real breakdown yet. The signals are looking like they are starting to circle, but we're not really getting the right entry at this stage. So I want this.
See, my chart, I've got it that weekly trend line. I've already come off it.
Yeah, so I wonder whether
interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I wonder whether that's because you have got this chart here. Let me just see what it looks like on the cash. Yeah, it looks pretty good on that, doesn't it? Yeah, which is good enough. I mean, you know, that would be good enough. That would be certainly good enough for me to see if I can get that lower high on the 4 hour that I would be looking to trade this. And you know, you could maybe argue that we've seen it already, but it's so volatile in this particular area. And really, you know, regardless of any of that, it's got to break down this pattern here. And you know, it's a difficult pattern to break down. But what I saw the other day was looking like it was breaking down. I think I took the trade at this low here, but it popped straight back into the area. So it could mess around here. If it closes down here, then I'll put an order in. If it closes on the monthly pivot on a day, you know, if a day closes down here, then I'll put an order in to go short on silver. And I think that gold and silver have still got a huge part to play in a bull run to the upside. I just think that there could be some profit taking coming. You know, the COT data doesn't suggest that time is now, but I do think that there could be some profit taken because it's come so far. And if we do bring in the COT data, let me just change the screen here. So you share, and we will.
So I'm going to trade that as a range trade anyway, coming off the top of that range. I'm just waiting on a setup.
Right.
Same as you.
Right.
Same as you.
Yeah. This is the COT data, and I'll bring the chart in a bit bigger here. This is gold, and you can see that gold continues to push. This is the most recent week's COT data here, and gold has continued to push to the upside, and has seen some sustained buying. Really, the lowest point in gold was back in November last year. You know, there was still some sort of messing around down there, and then it just started to go. You compare that to the silver chart here. And silver's just leveled off a little bit. You know, it hasn't continued to push. Okay, we did get a push last week, so the timing may be wrong here, but it's possibly leveled off. The buying may have leveled off here, lower than the highest point. You know, but back to gold, we see the highest point is still being created. So we're still seeing higher highs on gold. We're still seeing net positions added long, where silver, the net positions may be sort of taking a little bit of profit. on the gold trade. So that's it's a hedge trade, which it just takes away some of the risk. But that's the reason that I would absolutely do it as a hedge trade rather than just a short on silver. And if we go back to the charts, then the November was the low, as I said. Now, if we look at gold and how correct those speculators were, the gold rally started on November the 4th. So they were right on the money. When it really came down to the run, they were really, really good at picking the run with gold. And the same with silver. If you were to look at the silver chart, then it's the same thing. The lowest point in silver was actually back in October, mid October. So if we look in silver, the lowest point in silver is here, which is September. But this is when the lowest point in the COT report was created, and then we also started the rally. So the speculators are pretty good. So very loose messaging when it comes down to what to do here, because they're still buying silver, but they are buying it at a slightly lesser rate. And I would suspect that if one of them is if they're going to come down, silver's probably going to come down a lot quicker. Because of the volatility, and also the COT data suggests that they may well be some profit taking going on. So that's the picture with gold and silver. Now, if we look at the COT data for the seasonals, for the currencies.
Before we go off the indices, mate, Stephanie wants us to have a look at the Nasdaq and the US 30.
Okay, all right. Well, let's have a look at that. Now, I'm just gonna stick with this this first of all, because it's really useful information to see what the speculators are doing on this stuff. So if we look at the Nasdaq, I haven't got the US 30. I don't collect the data for that. But you look at the Nasdaq on the COT report, we haven't really seen, we did see some significant buying right up until the first week of January, but subsequently we've just seen a bit of profit taking coming out. We've seen some money coming out of the market on the Nasdaq, and I think if you're looking at which area, which sector to be going long on, it's probably not tech right now. So that's sort of like the first thing to note down. Now, if we go back to the charts and have a look at the Nasdaq, what we've seen really is, so the first week of the month was down here. This is they were buying really right up until this point here. We've seen a little boost to the upside, but as the markets hit these points here, what the speculators are saying is we're taking profit, and they're taking profit relatively early. I think the Nasdaq may well have some more room just to get to this trend line. But as soon as it does hit that trend line, I think the Nasdaq's probably coming down again, which means that it may not get there. You might sort of like get yourself caught in a trade to the upside that you don't want to get for a very short gain, when really it's possible that this whole area is a bit of a turnaround point and we come down. We've got earnings starting for the equities on the Nasdaq, and that's going to be really the key to whether we get to that trend line or not. I would suspect in the next couple of weeks, if those earnings come in weaker than expected, we may well see the Nasdaq level off and maybe even give us a signal to short. If the earnings come out well, we might get to the trend line. If we get beyond it, that's probably going to be dependent on if those earnings really are just a complete and utter if they really win, if they beat expectations by a significant number, then we might start to see the Nasdaq go through these levels. But I can't see a bull trend starting. This is
that was a great candle to trade on Friday morning. I've got to say, Thursday's bar. That's perfect for me.
Yeah. I did actually take a long.
Missed it. I didn't.
Yeah, I took a long in the Nasdaq. My two trades on Friday were long Nasdaq, short FTSE, and short silver, long gold.
Is there any reason we saw a good rally? or a good sell-off of the dollar?
There was a Fed speaker coming out and said that the Fed don't want to over tighten to the point where they choke the economy. So so after she spoke, we really did take off. The data's not great though. You know, that we're starting to see some genuine weakness. And I guess because everybody's now positioning for, the Fed have basically gone into hiding as they discuss what they're going to do at the next meeting in February. So we're not going to hear from the Fed now. So anything that happens with the NASDAQ there might be some toing and froing. It might well react off earnings. It might well react off data, but all that could get reversed as soon as we see what the Fed are going to do. And of course, the statement that comes out after them, that they're likely to be going 25 basis points. That's probably near enough priced in, but it's what the statement says afterwards, and also whether the market believes it. You know, if we're not in the phase where we can just listen to them anymore and speculate on the wording, because it's really how the market decides to react to it. Because the bond market is basically saying you're not tightening that much, you're not going that much higher. So there are sort of participants out there that are basically saying we don't believe you, which makes the whole thing a lot trickier, because you can't just look at data. You've also got to look at the sentiment and how the participants are judging what the Fed are saying to be genuine or fake. So we haven't
actually. It'd be interesting, and my mind isn't that sharp at the moment because I've had a big weekend, but. It'd be interesting to reflect on how the Fed came out of QE, because they were very aggressive for quite some time coming out of QE. So 2000 or let's say 2009 to 2000 maybe not that long. I can't remember now. It may well be worth looking at that period of time where they were raising interest rates aggressively. So we had tightening to a very strong degree, and how the market reacted to that last time. It may well be relevant.
Yeah, it might do.
Because we do the same things,
Yeah, well, absolutely right, mate. And it's difficult to know what's coming. I mean, we've got all this sort of stuff happening, and this week. I think the pound's in focus, and I think the Aussie's in focus. Later on today, we got Christine Lagarde. I think is out at 5:45 UK time. That might well drive the euro. We're not really seeing too much in the way of movement so far this morning. We're just kind of floating around right now, and there's not a lot going on. Obviously, we've got Chinese New Year, which is affecting the market, and it might be that Swissy thing was not such a good trade while Singapore's on holiday. I don't know. Maybe there's a lack of purchasing of the Sing because no business is being done.
I'm not sure there's too many in the room could actually trade that anyway, frankly. But,
fair enough. Yeah. So that's
your theme is Swissy short anyway.
Swissy short is the theme. Yeah.
Stephanie, a supplementary. What's the red line? Is that the red line on Ash's chart? That'll be a pivot. Is it the monthly or weekly?
Yeah, so my pivots go like the UK flag is red, white, and blue. Red is monthly, white is weekly, right, and blue is daily. So you won't see the daily until we go down to these ones. But yeah, the
is that the one, Stephanie, that you were asking about? I'm guessing it is.
I'll tell you what, Stephanie, it'd be quite good to know whether you're trading on a short-term time frame or a long-term time frame as well, because obviously sort of, discussions do change depending on what we are, what time frame we're looking at, what's our expectation over a particular period. Because as I say, the Nasdaq's got a chance to get up here, and if you are looking at short-term positions, then the suggestion would be that if this did pull back to the weekly pivot, that it would probably at least have a bite at these highs again, and possibly beyond. It might well get up to that point. So if you're looking to go long on the Nasdaq, then there's a kind of a buy zone. It's quite wide, but the buy zone really right now is, and you'd have to take in the pivot as part of the buy zone, but it really does come all the way down here. because of this was the previous kind of area of consolidation. So it might well come and test that area and still go long. There might be something going on there. I get a little bit nervous about this. Actually, it's not great. It's not a great line there.
Thank you. I love that you asked the question, Stephanie, because it does appear a quite good indicator, because the market, the Nasdaq in particular, is working off it very well.
What's that? Oh, the monthly pivot.
The monthly pivot, yeah.
Yeah, the monthly, yeah, absolutely, mate. And this is why the long was definitely on for me. And it was because of that monthly pivot, but it had come down quite a long way. Off the back of one number, really. There was one number that came out, and I think it was retail sales, and the Nasdaq decided to take a bit of a spanking. But as soon as the Fed speaker came out, then we got the rally again, and there's probably some further upside for this. But as I say, not here. If anything, I think that there's probably a short on it, a short term. There's probably a short on down to the pivots, and maybe down to the trend line as well, which should coincide with these lows. So I think there's some downside for the Nasdaq, possibly first, before we start moving up again. I still think that there's probably an attempt to get back to these highs and this trend line before we do really start to wait and figure out what's going to happen next. And we've got the Fed out. I think it's in a couple of weeks' time. We've still got, or maybe a week's time. We've still got the Fed rate decision at the start of February. So while that goes on, there's probably going to be some jostling either side of these particular numbers. Of this high is unlikely to go through this high. Definitely very unlikely to go through this trend line if it gets there before the Fed meeting. So I think some easing back down again first, before we kind of get into this range trade for around about a week is probably the way that I'd be looking at the Nasdaq right now. And it'd have to be the same with the Dow. You're talking about the US 30, which is the Dow Jones Industrials, have to be the same with that, because it's going to have the same situation going on as the Nasdaq, and you can see actually this one hasn't come back really. It's really just broken down and continued lower. So checking this on the daily, yeah, while it's above that area, let's have a look at this area as well. That's the trend line for me that I'd be focused on, this one here. And while we're above that, it would suggest that if it does come down, it'll probably try and bounce up to the monthly pivots first. But I would suggest that this is really a short. I think both the Nasdaq and the Dow are both a short, but I just don't think we've quite hit the highest point of the particular run just yet. Even though it might come down a bit first, I think one more rally before we go short is probably going to be the case. But you look at the price action so far today. Pretty quiet, it's nothing's really going on. The FTSE 100 is open and it's currently stuck between these pivots, and I suspect it will probably remain that way. There might be some buying if it comes down to the lows, but if you're in a range situation, you need to pick out the highs and the lows, where resistance and support is, and attempt to try and trade them from those particular areas, or at least see a signal from those areas. Let them touch it first. And then see if you can trade it. But I think we're in a bit of a range situation, if I'm honest, and I'm not sure whether. Trend traders won't do that well, in my opinion, Stephanie. If that's what you're looking for, a trend, I think that this is probably one to avoid at this particular stage until we get a little bit more clarity.
So Stephanie's, you don't have. Well, obviously, you have the pivots, and they're different to Ash's chart. Where are you getting your pivots from, Ash? I'm
looking at the futures, so that's probably why.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. I'm looking at futures rather than cash. Now you're looking at this chart. Then this is the US 30 here. So I'm presuming that your pivots probably. Oops, let's just change. It should be on.
I think it was probably on the Nasdaq that you were saying there was a difference.
Oh, the Nasdaq. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Well, this is the Nasdaq. This is the Nasdaq. So it looks like, yeah, if you compare the two of them here, Does that look more like it? So you've still got the weekly pivot and the monthly, the daily and the weekly up there, but then the monthly's down there. It's double. Well, I mean, they're fairly similar actually on my cash and my futures. But the other thing is that you've got to take into account is that the brokers actually do calculate it slightly differently. I've got 3 different broker accounts, and they're all the pivots are in different places, and it doesn't matter as long as if you are a pivot trader and you see a result off the charts that you're trading off, you can still find some confidence with them. Doesn't matter that people have got pivots in different places. It just matters that you see that they react off the pivots that you're seeing from your broker. But the brokers do seem to have pivots in different areas. I mean, I've got a JD account, which is different. I've got a Fusion account, which is different. And this is Axie, and this is different too. Now, in truth, I'd use the pivots, but I don't put a lot of weight on them. So I can't say whether the pivots are brilliant areas or not on Axie, because as I say, they're not my main focus. Are you a wave rider trader, Stephanie? Is that what you're looking at? Are you really looking at the weekly pivot, or is it something different? Because it is really important to know whether you're going to be short term or long term when you're trying to find answers for where a market may well go.
We're waiting on an answer from Stephanie on that one. I'll let you know as soon as it comes through.
Happy New Year, by the way. Happy Chinese New Year to the guys in the room.
100%. Whereas, every trade is different, of course. The pivots for me are absolute, gold.
Yeah.
That's where I find an edge on the 30-minute chart in particular. Not every day, but if the pivots are lining up the way I like them to, and today is a case in point. You just try to work on rejections of pivots. Okay, well, the answer to that one is if your pivots are working, go with them. If you think you need to change them, then I'm not sure what broker you're with, probably Fusion. Maybe you need to change.
Yeah.
Either A, the way you're trading them, or B, the pivots themselves.
We should also have a quick look at the euro dollar, mate. I'm sure you've looked at this already, but just in the same way that I'm thinking of gold and silver, I feel about the euro as well, because really this is a dollar trade. What's gone on with the dollar is that it's continued to push lower, and the yen I have to say is for me a bit of a dark horse for some upside. So I'm interested in the yen. But let's have a look at the dollar as well, because the dollar has continued to push to the downside. Big gap down in the dollar this morning, and it just can't catch a bid at the minute. This is another important area. It hasn't surged through it, but it has gone through it again. There's a trend line here, which it looks like it has gone through. That was the trend line the other day. But we do get these false breaks, and it hasn't gone through that with too much confidence in many respects. It's rejected it once, but it hasn't really sort of settled just yet. But we're getting to another area of important support. So if you look at this on the monthly, there's areas all down here. This range here on the dollar. It's probably there is the lowest point. So it does have some more room, but you can see here that this is a zone that we're in right now. This whole area for me is an area to look for buying opportunities, but there hasn't been any reason to buy the dollar at this stage. So huge move up, huge move back down again. Where does it eventually settle? And I would have thought it will be somewhere around here, but there's just no reason to buy. And if the Fed do end up in this situation where they pause, the next thing people are going to be looking for is the pivot. And if no other central bank does the same thing, which of course they will, then the dollar is going to continue to move to the downside. But you'd think that there would be some dollar bulls stepping in, relatively soon, which pushes the euro down, it pushes gold, silver down, pushes oil down as well, probably. And oil's another one that I find quite interesting for some potential downside. Doesn't seem to want to catch a sell-off in the auction right now. It's still pushing to the upside, but I still think that oil's got some downside to come. but it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of it's difficult to kind of get a reason why, except for the recession, and because the recession is being kind of like passed back and forth of how serious it is, and it's difficult to kind of get a feel of how serious it's going to be. Then it's difficult to kind of like get an idea of what's going to happen with oil as well. So, not really the right timing. It looks like we're in buy zones. It looks like we may well have an opportunity, but no real reason to do anything with the dollar, but either stick with it if you're selling or possibly even take some short-term short sides.
Interesting. If you listen to a recording of the early part of the show, it's pretty much cut and paste what I said.
Right.
And I use the dollar index as my guide for short term today. I think pound, Aussie, euro are all shorts to the pivots, but thereafter, exactly the same reasoning. I can't find a reason to buy the dollar at the moment. Yeah. And I think that level is pretty soft. That support level is pretty soft. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, doesn't it? I mean, we got PMIs from Australia this week. We have got inflation data from. We got some PMIs from the United Kingdom. Looks to me like Wednesday's the day. CPI data from Australia, so that's going to be a bit of a driver. CPI from Singapore as well, which could be might help my trade if I'm still in it. We got inflation data from the UK on Wednesday as well. So Wednesday, as things start to ramp up, a bank rate from Canada on Wednesday as well, which is predicted to come in at 25 basis point rise. So maybe a slowing down of those interest rate rises. And then we've got some inflation data from Japan on Thursday. And we've got some inflation data from the United States PCE on Thursday and Friday. So there's a bit of a slew of data this week, which suggests that if the Aussie does start to see inflation data pick up, that may well be a bit of a buying opportunity. If it doesn't, then I wonder whether we could start to see that Aussie yen trade turn around again, mate, and we might start to see the yen strengthen. The yen just feels like a bit of a, as I say, a bit of a dark horse and kind of ready to run.
Lewis, very dark.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult one because the thing about the yen is the BOJ decide to switch on their yield curve control, so the yen starts to buy up. But then in the last rate decision, they leave it where it was. They didn't raise interest rates. And I think that there's almost some pressure from the market to say, come on, guys, get on board. Everybody's sticking with this interest rate hike and probably staying where they are. You guys are still negative. This just doesn't seem right. But the Bank of Japan are holding firm. The assumption that they could change eventually will remain. And while that does remain, I think we're going to see some volatility with the yen because I think that there's people trying to catch that move before they do change. But I think the assumption certainly is that they will change. I don't think there's going to be a could be about it. I think that they should change and they will change is probably the way that investors are looking at the yen right now. So I think it's a bit of a dark horse. Difficult one to trade though, mate. I mean, how you get into the yen and hold on to it, I don't know, because it looks like it might well just jerk around so much that it's going to be very difficult to trade.
Nothing new there, in my humble opinion, I've got to say. Especially if you pair it with the dollar, it's just so tough. And, other people have no trouble trading it at all. At the moment, dollar yen is very much in a perfect channel, just going down. So to trade it off the top to the bottom makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. Yet the setups don't seem to be there.
Yeah.
It bounces and then it goes fast. Bounces and it goes fast. No opportunity to get in.
You contacted Paul and oh gosh.
He's camping with Jackson at the moment.
Oh,
You're right. You keep going. I'm going to take the screenshot tick.
Yeah, do it, mate. I'm just going to text him back because he just messaged me to say that he could have come in, but it might be a bit late now. I'll let him.
Okay, cool. Stephanie, sorry, I was just going to go through the NASDAQ because that's the chart that you were talking about, Nash was talking about. And I think my pivots are very, very close to Ash's. This is Fusion. I've got an FXCM account, which is, I haven't got the pivots on it, sorry, so I can't tell you whether they're the same, but that looks to be very much the same monthly pivot as Ash has got. If it's, pardon me, if it's not, and that's what I was saying, this particular scenario is very, very good. Bounce, bang.
Oh,
bounce,
mate,
bang,
we still got my charts.
Oh, do we? That's a shame.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing. Yeah, you got it.
Sorry about that, Stephanie and others. So, my pivots look to be very, very much the same as Ash's. But I wanted, and you say you're using them as rejections, right? And fantastic, because that's exactly what's been happening on this chart. Rejects the monthly pivot, bang. Rejects the monthly pivot, bang. Rejects the monthly pivot, bang. And then going back the other way, rejects it, get a new high. Nothing there. Then maybe on a different time frame. This is the daily chart I'm looking at. Rejected it there. Didn't get anything out of it, however. And that's the one I was talking about on Friday. That's the that Ash took. So lovely, lovely candle to trade, in my humble opinion. But I'll tell you how I use pivots, and I use them in three ways. And they are very, very cool for me when I get them to talk to me, if I can put it that way. And the way I use them is, let's go to the euro dollar, because that's very, very clear today. Now, my analysis on the euro dollar is we are at a resistance level, and that's the backside of this trade line here, or trend line, if you want. Couldn't be clearer, that we're at the backside of that trend line. So I'm expecting to find resistance here. There's also a horizontal level coming through here. So I take that on board, and then I go, all right, what are the pivots telling me? Pivots are telling me that the daily pivot, which is the pink line, the blue line. Will I change these? Maybe I have changed them around. And that's obviously the daily there. So the pink line is the daily, blue line is the weekly, green line is the monthly. So you can see that the daily and the month and the weekly are very close together. However, the daily is above the weekly, which is above the monthly. Now, that tells me, without looking at anything else, I don't need to look at trend lines, I don't need to look at whether we're getting higher highs or higher lows. That's telling me straight away that the trend is bullish, because chronologically, we've got a daily above a weekly, above a monthly. So it tells me that. It also tells me that on a short term and today, intraday wise, the last thing I want to do is trade this long. And the reason for that is the daily pivot, and you don't have to look too far, right? Every single day in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, the daily pivot's been tested. And that's very much the case, not 100%, but very much the case all time. So I've done these numbers for years. And every time I do them, I come up with the same result. It's somewhere between 60, 65% and 80% of the time that the daily pivot is tested. You've got to pick your poison, of course. You don't want to just trade to the daily pivot because it's untested. But what you want to do is take note that it's untested and say, well, okay, I can't go long here until that condition has been met, because you're trading against probability. It's highly probable, 70% plus, that the daily pivot will be tested today. Therefore, yes, I might have a long bias, longer term, but intraday, I have to be very, very careful if I enter the market to go long, because I've got that number working against me. So you'd either have to have your stop loss down here where it's relatively safe from that condition, or you could even look to trade it to the daily pivot, which is what I try to do. So where you're getting very, very good results of rejection of pivots, That's exactly what I expect to happen here today. I expect the daily pivot to be tested at some point, but it might be 1 minute before the close of day. I don't know that. Sadly, I wish I did. That'd be really cool. But I'm looking for a setup here. However you get into the market, I'm looking for a setup. So I use it as a support level, as I would today, as you are, or a resistance level. And I use it to tell me where the market is likely to go in the short term. Now, if we're using a weekly pivot, a little bit longer term. If we're using a monthly pivot, a little bit longer term. But we're talking about the daily pivot today, which has got a backup called the weekly pivot. When these two are close together, it really is a magnetic force for price. So, like I said, it's not a trigger to say, all right, let's go short. It's a trigger in my mind to say I can't go long here, and I can look for a setup to go short to trade it to that point. So that's the three ways I use the pivots. So I think they're really, really cool for me. May not be for anyone else. That's fine. We're all different. But I would suggest that if you do the numbers, it's not hard to do. You just line up your charts and go backwards. Say, well, okay, the daily pivot's been tested 7 times out of 10. Why would I trade away from that? And that's really the point that I make. Hope that helps. How you going, bud? And by the way,
doing well, mate. I'm just texting Paul. He's going to join us on Thursday.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And by the way, Stephanie, that's all I'm waiting for. This is probably my number one project for the day, is to trade this to here, to the daily pivot. How I do that, nothing changes. I look for a setup, one of my own setups. And if I don't see it, I don't trade it. And that's what I mean. It's not just, okay, we've got an untested daily pivot. We're way up here. Let's trade it. That may work for you if you can find a way to do that on a regular basis. Happy days. The only way I've found that that's profitable longer term is to wait for the setup that I normally trade, which ain't too close at the moment, I've got to tell you. But we'll see. It could happen, as I say, the last minute of the day. We'll see. So that's kind of where I'm at. No point repeating all of that I've said before. That's exactly what I'm waiting for, to trade short term anything against the dollar down to those pivots which are untested.
Sounds good,
that's
mate.
The plan.
It was going to be a quiet day, I think. We got Chinese New Year, and you can see it in the charts. The charts are basically saying volatility is out of the market. There's probably a whole big group of people that just aren't interested in this market at all. So could be a little bit of a tricky day if you're expecting moves to happen fast. There's every likelihood that by the time we get to the US session that things start to move a little bit more. But we could be in for a bit of a quiet period for a few hours until that happens, and even then it might not happen at all today.
Indeed.
So it's worth noting that if you struggle to make money this week because you're finding it hard to find direction, that could be because there's very few.
There's very little.
Very little direction, and very, very few investors that are willing to actually pick a side. So you might sort of see. But then in saying that, with a lack of liquidity, something could move significantly. I mean, whether you can catch one of those is always going to be tricky. But it's Wednesday for me, mate. Wednesday's when things start to pick up a little bit. That's when we start to see the data start to roll in. Aussie's interesting, pound's interesting, euro is always of some kind of interest, and of course the dollar, and the dark horse for me is the yen. As I said earlier in the show, I am short on that Swissy, and it's currently, where's it going? Currently Swissy Sing. Oh, actually, no, sorry, it's the wrong one. I thought it was. It's just coming back to my entry, so it's actually we had a little short-term turnaround. Actually, the Swissy Sing, so then we might actually see that profit coming. There it is. Is that there? No, that's not.
No, I haven't got that.
You haven't got the Swissy Sing.
No, I'm looking at Kiwi Swissy. Did Paul give you an opinion on the Kiwi?
No, he hasn't. But he has said that he will join us on Thursday, so he will probably give us that. No, yes, he did actually. Can come in. Jackson's asleep in camp. Oh no, that's nothing to do with that. Oh, he said it will be good for the Kiwi. That was the last thing he said.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So Kiwi Swissy might be an option, eh?
Interesting to hear why he believes that. Aussie Swissy also for a short I looked at this morning as well, which I thought was quite an interesting trade. And if you know, the Aussie Swissies, if the Aussie does get that CPI data coming out, then Aussie Swissy short, if you've managed to get into that, would be okay. But just looks like it's broken down a bit. What time frame is that? Can you go on the 4 hourly, mate?
That's the daily. This was one from last week. That
I remember this.
I tried to trade short, but nothing happened, of course. You want the 4 hour?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. You know, big breakdown back to that level and tested where it's come from. Quite like the look of that, but the level's good, but the actual setup's not there. Yeah, it looks like it's broken through there, doesn't it?
And retested it. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Potential head and shoulders. We're picking it up on the right shoulder as well. So quite like the look of that.
CAD did exactly that.
The left shoulder's quite thin too.
Missed that on a 4 hour chart. I can't trade that short there though. That's the problem.
CAD's going to be, I mean, the CAD's the big one, really. If you think about, what's going on with the BOC, the CAD's a big one this week. Rate decision, only one with a rate decision this week.
Ring high, break, retest, yeah. We'll see.
Okay, mate. Well, let's wrap it up.
We're done.
We'll be back on Thursday, as we say, and have a great week, guys. Happy New Year to all of you. Yes, I do remember that. Lewis is saying, do you remember him calling the dollar yen short in early December? And I do remember that. He said he got out a little bit too early, but he did call it. And great having you in, guys.
All right, guys, that's it. Have a good week. Enjoy your festivities, and we will catch you on Thursday. See ya. Bye-bye for now.